Good afternoon, everyone. Today's Monday, July 7th, 2025. We are here this afternoon for a work session with Community Planning, Infrastructure, and Resources. I'm Kristen Stevens, Chair of the Board of County Commissioners. With me are my fellow commissioners, Commissioner Jody Shattuck McNally and Commissioner John Gafalis. We have our county manager with us, Lorinda Volker. And we have several items on our agenda today. I'll turn things over to Leslie Ellis, our Community Planning, Infrastructure, and Resources Director, to kick us off. Welcome, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioners. Good afternoon. I'll quickly hand it over to Megan Flanagan and John Plybun to give you the update on the work that's happening at Carter Lake, and then also an update on the Poudre River Trail. So, thank you, Megan.
Okay, great. Megan Flanagan with Natural Resources. And these are a couple projects you've heard us talk about over the years. They're projects we have significant grant funding for. And we just wanted to kind of give you a progress update where we are both with our paving project at Carter Lake and soon to be at Horsetooth. And then we are excited to have the Poudre River Trail out to bid and soon to close and hopefully get that started. So I'll pass over to John to take you through some of the details.
Commissioners, Manager, my name is John Plybun. I am managing a couple of projects that you're pretty interested in that we've discussed a number of times, and I'll just get right to them. The first one we're going to discuss today is the Poudre River Trail. And as Megan had mentioned, it is currently out to bid. We expect results here within a month, and we expect construction to start in the fall here. And we just want to point out that we do have a number of partnerships together that we are completing this project with, GOCO, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, CDOT, and our own funds. And I just wanted to point out exactly where it is that we'll be working. You can see that here we're connecting in Tinmouth to River Bluffs open space. The red line there is what we're going to be building here. And I don't see any issues with us getting this done this year. The next project I'd like to talk to you about is a larger asphalt paving project that we're completing or beginning already this year. And that also has some partnership funds. You can see we're contributing $3 million. We've got $11 million contribution from the Federal Lands Access Program, which is administered through the Federal Highways Administration and Central Federal Lands, who is our partner here. Lastly, we have the Federal Lands Transportation Program funds, which were provided to us from the Bureau of Reclamation, totaling $15 million on this project. And we see a schedule here on the right side. Contractually, we have until August of 2027 to complete this project, but we're working diligently with our contractor and our federal partners to accelerate that schedule as much as possible. Now, I just wanted to take you through the areas that we'll be completing. This is at Carter Lake and Eagle Campground. You can see we'll be doing the entire access road and the main campground parking lot. Then we'll be heading over towards the east side of Carter, where we have the Big Thompson day use parking lot and the new quarry parking lot, the overflow parking lot there. I want to also point out that in between these two parking lots, we'll be expanding the road towards the water, and we'll be installing 2 turn lanes in there as well to ensure safety is addressed as well here. This is the last place we'll be addressing at Carter Lake. This is the North Pines campground and access area. You can see the access roads will be done as well as all of the parking lots. And then we'll be working our way over to Horsetooth Reservoir and improving things at Inlet Bay. You can see here the access road and the main parking lots will be taken care of. And then we'll be moving right over to South Bay, and here we've got all parking lots and a number of access roads being completed as well. And importantly, we also have a turn lane coming down the hill into South Bay, a new turn lane to be constructed as well. At the bottom of the page here, I've listed our communications website for this project. And we, the contractor, our federal partners, everybody is directing all communications to this one website. And we are I'll go and show you that website next. We have it here, and everybody goes to it. This is where we update regularly. We have, I think our last update was June 26th on here, and we have quite a bit of information for the public and everybody to gather here at this one location. And that's my presentation. I'd love to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions? Commissioner Falls?
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation and the good work. Could we go back to the Poudre River Trail one? And I guess in particular, so I know that some of the delay, well, I understand that some of the delay with getting this stretch of the trail in place had to do with easement issues. Maybe we could talk about that a little bit. And also, I think the trail is completed that as it goes under the highway. So on either end, where is this stretch going to connect with what's already constructed? Because I think this is the last remaining piece. Couple of questions in there. Sorry about that.
Yeah, great questions. Yes, it was, we were securing the final easements for this last mile, working with private landowners. And some of the delay was we did get that CDOT grant on the previous slide. And when we work with CDOT, whether it's a road project or a regional trail, we have to work with through their land agents and processes, which also adds a little bit of time. So it's between those two, we kind of juggled getting that easement finalized and some of the details with that landowner. But that did finalize about a month ago, and we put it out to bid about 3 weeks ago. So that's been exciting. Yes. Just time on a lot of the details, the alignment. There's some wetlands that we did some mitigation on, things like that. So you can see north is the town limits of Timnath, and you can actually see the pathway coming out of Timnath Community Park, and which is, the label is just at the top of the map. And that trail is basically where the sidewalk ends in Timnath. And so we'll be coming from there down to the reservoir at the south end is Kiger Reservoir, which is owned and managed by the town of Windsor as a natural area. And we've already constructed the path that you see at the south end of the red line heading towards our trailhead at River Bluffs open space. So there's a concrete path connection there. And then, of course, you can see the rest of the Poudre Trail to the south. So this is truly the last section of that 45 or so mile trail system all the way to Greeley. And then northwest to LaPorte.
Thank you. Commissioner Shannon McNally?
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. Really excited that this project's progressing forward. So can we go to the either marina or the parking lots, maybe to the inlet bay. So there's that one. This one's for Carter, right?
This is in
Horseshoe. So as we're I'm sure it's just infrastructure and helping improve. There's road improvements, but also is it going to be kind of redesigning and reconstructing kind of the parking lot for ease of trailers and boats and the decon and the areas for boat inspection, and is that kind of in the process to redesign that, making that safer for all? But it's safer now, but I mean just improvements for safety and access and visitor experience. I will share why I want to ask those questions after you answer. So,
Yes, this entire project is really aimed at improving safety, both for pedestrians, vehicular safety, and pedal as well. In here, we're not doing a full reconstruction or a full redesign, but we are clearly demarking everything. And you know, as you've been out there, a number of these areas are gravel currently, and painted gravel really fades quickly, and that's really a problematic scenario. So once we have asphalt pavement on these areas with proper striping, we will be addressing those safety concerns.
great. Well, I'm super excited. I know how busy things were. I spent 4th of July out on Horsetooth with the Rangers, and I just have to just say how impressed I was with how they managed. I think they were full before 8 o'clock, and and it was well used. But on the water and some of the other issues with large parties and stuff, it was so calm though. It was just amazing how well it was managed. And forgive me, I don't know, maybe have all their ranks and stuff, but Ranger Hilty and Ranger Gibson, or Lieutenant Gibson and Lieutenant, Ranger Travis and Seasonal Ranger, I think he's Seasonal Ranger, and Quinn, just the professionalism and the way they handled safety and engaged folks. And we walked some of the campgrounds and talked to people having picnics. And I was just so impressed with the engagement and the positivity, but also they kept people safe and how they kept and supportive staff as they moved people in and out with the boats and the weather changing. And I just have to say, maybe I'm biased, but I don't care, I'm biased. Amazing. I think we have some of the best rangers in the state. Amazing program, amazing engagement, and it's so special what you guys have created with those group and how they engage, and also the way they move people in and out of the parks and off the lake and through those parking lots. It just blows me away. So I just wanted to commend them all. I had a great day, but also I watch all those little things, and it just so impressive. And I want to just that kind of builds up to all the leadership and how you support all of them. So I wanted to thank you all for the work that you do, because sometimes it makes it look so easy, but I know it's not. So I just want to say thank you, and I'm excited to see how this helps. Thank you.
We appreciate your kind words, and I just want to mention that while we might have the best rangers in the state, we also have the best commissioners in the state, and we want to specifically mention our thanks to your advocacy on this project in particular. We know that when the administration first came into town, this project was in jeopardy, and thanks to your diligent work, we were able to get this across the finish line, so thank you.
Well, thank you. I just have one question, and then we'll let you go. With the Poudre River Trail, do we anticipate there's going to be like a ribbon cutting or some kind of, I mean, this is pretty excited to finally have it complete. What are we envisioning for celebrating that?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. We're still working on what that'll look like. Of course, we have all the municipal partners that worked on it with us, the funding partners. So we'll probably do something kind of small for just our section, and then there may be some things that are more expansive across the region. So we'll definitely let you know as soon as we have a sense of what that might look like and the timing, which is the big part we're kind of waiting just once we know the exact construction schedule.
Sure. No, that sounds great. Well, we'll love to celebrate this segment, but the whole thing, let's have a really big party you know, with all the municipalities and everyone involved, because this is really a regional project, and it's really nice to celebrate that how we work together on a big project like this. Yeah.
Planning to get my 7-speed Schwinn bicycle tuned up properly so I can do the 44-mile stretch, but hopefully somebody give me a ride back.
Yeah.
All right, that's a call for John to get a ride, so if anybody wants to, otherwise we'll have to put his thumb out. County Manager, would you like to say anything?
I think these are great safety projects, and I think access to the Poudre River Trail, connecting this one last section is really exciting, and I'm glad there's going to be a big celebration. It's such a huge accomplishment regionally. So many partners involved, so much time, and still, even with all that time and all the changing faces, here we are at the end doing this last section. So congratulations to your team for all the work you put into making this happen and for knitting together all the funding it took to do that. In terms of our park, I think the commissioner is exactly right. Having been there on the weekends with a boat trailer, it's really heavy traffic, and any improvement we can do, I know, to improve safety and access, to keep people smiling and agreeable as they're there to enjoy the time is really important. And a special thank you to the texting this year. I've heard a lot of people say how much they appreciate knowing when these parking lots are full so that they don't contribute to the problem. That was a real win, I think, for these kind of services. And we all do seem to understand that reservoirs have capacity. They can't take more people. Parking lots are designed in that way to help manage that, and I think the residents do seem to understand. So thank you for that and for the upgrades.
Thank you. Well, thank you, John and Megan. Thanks a lot.
Yeah,
Good,
thank you.
good news items.
Yeah.
So we like that. All right, we will move on to our next item, which is the
Yeah, thank you.
Berthoud Fire's proposed fire impact fee adjustments.
As everyone's getting settled here, I'll do some quick introductions and then they may want to introduce again. But we have Eric Freed here, who you know well, our building official from the county. And then with us today, thank you, from Berthoud Fire, we have Chief Stephen Charles and Jill Wilson, who's Chief of Staff, and then Michael Verdone with BBC, the consultant who prepared the impact study report. So are you kicking this off?
Yeah, I thought
Okay.
I would just set the table and turn it over to our friends from Berthoud Fire. I came before you last month, I believe it is, to talk about Berthoud Fire had done a new Nexus study, which is to see what the cost of what the capital cost is going to be to provide for fire protection for future growth, and that was recommending some fee increases, which were substantial. You know, there was a good reason for it, and you had a bunch of questions about about details of the Nexus study and how this applied and what would happen next. And so what you wanted to do is have a dialogue with Berthoud Fire, so we were able to make this time work. Their consultant who did the study, as well as the fire chief and chief of staff, and so they're here to discuss more about their Nexus study and their impact fees, and hopefully answer any questions you have. And with that, I'll turn it over to you guys.
Of course, this worked brilliantly a minute ago.
Well, I'd like to thank you.
Yeah, so the little red light has to be
Yeah,
on.
thank you. Okay, I'll start over. Thank you for the opportunity to come before you this afternoon. As was mentioned, my name's Stephen Charles. I'm the fire chief of Berthoud Fire. I have Jill Wilson, our chief of staff. She has a short presentation for you, but I'd like to give you the opportunity to ask some questions, and hopefully we'll give you the answers and to satisfy your interest in this. And of course, we have our consultant, Michael Verdone, who's here as well. Under state statute, we started this process. The initial impact fee study started in 2017, became active in 2018. Then by statute, we're required to update that every 5 years. So here we are, finishing that 5-year period, and we just completed our study. It's gone before our board, and I'm going to turn it over to Jill.
Thank you, everybody, for taking the time for us today. I just wanted to give a little bit of information about our district. As you know, we're Berthoud Fire Protection District, and we cover 103 square miles. That includes Boulder, Weld, Larimer, and the town of Berthoud. We serve approximately 22,000 residents within our district area. We currently have 35 sworn personnel and 3 non-sworn personnel. We have 2 stations currently. One is in the town of Berthoud and one is west of town within Larimer County. We also just closed on property that is off of 287 and Berthoud Parkway. We just closed on that property a couple months ago for plans of a future station. Our current budget, as you can see, is a little over $7 million, which is a reduction of about $500,000 from 2024. History of our impact fees. As you know, in 2017, the House bill was passed to allow impact fees to be assessed. Therefore, in 2018, Berthoud Fire did complete our first impact fee study. We implemented that study and those fees in 2019 in the town of Berthoud and in Larimer County. At that time, we did not implement an IGA with Weld or Boulder counties. Again, with that lapse of about 5 to 7 years, we contracted with BBC Research and Consulting in 2024 to do a new impact fee study, which we have concluded. In 2025, after working with BBC, we did present that study to our board in April. At that April meeting, our board had a few questions, had some feedback that Michael was able to take back, and then we presented again to our board in May. And so I'm going to move it on to Michael to go over that impact fee study.
Great. Thank you, Commissioners. Pleasure to be here this afternoon and be able to speak to you about the study itself. So the 2025 study mostly built on the study that the district had in place from 2018, incorporating updated information. So the gist of how these studies are done is essentially there's 2 ways to do them. One is to do what's called a capital buy-in approach. And so there we're looking at what the replacement value of the district's capital infrastructure is if it all had to be replaced today. The other way that these are done, and it's less common with fire districts, is through a plan-based approach. And so that's assuming that a fire district has a capital improvement plan with growth-related items of that plan called out separately from repair and replacements. Most fire districts in the state lack that level of detail, and so for that reason, we generally use a capital buy-in approach. So in the case of this study, what we looked at were all of the capital assets that the district uses to provide their service, the replacement value of those if they had to be rebought today, because of course that's what happens when development occurs, and then looking at patterns of development as they exist today to see how does that capital relate to those different types of development, so residential, single-family homes, multifamily, and various types of non-residential development. And then going through some mathematics, we essentially derive what we think each household or each type of non-residential land use has invested into the district's capital, and that becomes then the basis of their fees. And so this is the type of table we produce looking at data from the county assessor to determine how much built area is being served by the fire district. So you can see it's primarily residential with about 15% non-residential, and then there's breakouts below that. And again, all of that data is from the county assessor and based on the tax IDs that pay into the district's mill levy. So we can actually go to the next slide here. So this is just a table of the district's assets. So you can see on the top there's buildings and land and what the replacement value of those would be if you had to buy them or construct them again today. And then a list of vehicles and apparatus, as well as some other miscellaneous equipment, and then the impact fee fund balance. And so there's about $28 million of capital assets that Berthoud uses to provide that service. And so taking the previous table and this table in combination, then we go through some mathematics and derive what we think those impact fees are, and we can go to the next slide here. And so this was our proposed impact fee schedule, and then for the sake of this conversation, we wanted you to see what they were charging in 2018 and what the fees that we're recommending are for 2025 based on that update. So I think a few things that are important here are that for small dwellings, the fees really didn't change much at all. And if we were to look at like construction cost inflation from 2018 to 25, it'd be roughly 40%. So for dwellings of up to 1,200 square feet, that's nothing like a 40% increase, although for larger dwellings, of course, the increase is much more significant. For non-residential, the categories are a little bit different, so it's hard to make a true apples to apples comparison. But again, it's on the order of about a 40% increase, and it just varies a bit depending on what type of non-residential land use we're talking about. So those are sort of how they stack up. I suppose while we're talking about this, just to answer a question I know that you all had posed, was why are these fees so much higher than, is it Poudre Fire Authority or Poudre? And the answer is it's really difficult for me to give you an explanation for that without seeing their study or knowing anything about it. I would say in my experience, when there are those types of differences, they often stem from fees being extremely outdated. So it's not uncommon for a fire district to conduct a study and then not revisit it for 10 years. And so their fees may have just completely lost touch with what it costs to actually purchase capital today. They may have had a study like ours and said, well, we're going to adopt our fees at a lower level. And so that's what that may reflect. So it's just really difficult to look just at their fees alone without the supporting study that led to their calculation and make any sort of statement about why someone's fees are higher or lower. But I will say that in our experience over the last several years doing these fees are really in line with what we're seeing across other fire districts throughout the Front Range. And so with that, I'll turn it back over to Jill.
Okay, to finish up, I just wanted to go over the timeline of these impact fees. We have a meeting scheduled with our Board of Directors in August to adopt the proposed fees. And we plan to implement those fees in all 3 counties and the town of Berthoud as of January 1st of 2026. In the meantime, we will be working with the building department and you all to engage in an IGA to help with the collection of those fees. Lastly, we just wanted to go over some questions that you may have or that have popped up for anybody. The first one that Michael touched on was why are our fees higher compared to some of the other departments? As Michael said, it is hard to determine, not seeing those studies. We have looked at some other departments. We do know that Windsor Fire and Loveland Fire will be conducting studies this year and will be coming forward with new impact fees also. Frederick Firestone, which is not in Larimer County, but another department close to us, they have just recently completed an impact fee study, and their new study looks very similar to ours with fees very similar in those amounts. Another question is, will those fees be phased in? As we have set right now, the board is planning on adopting those fees in August with the full fee amounts implemented in January. Will there be a fee waiver for affordable housing permits? That is something that's going to be presented to our board in August as part of the resolution. I can't say now if they're going to adopt that as part of the resolution, but I'm pretty sure that they will. One of our board members is been very active with Habitat for Humanity, and so he's very cognizant of the housing costs and fees. And then another question we did have, will there be a lower fee for homes with residential sprinklers? And at this time, we do not foresee that. That's something we can speak to our board about, but we do not foresee fees changing for that. And in conclusion, we appreciate your time and would welcome any questions you may have.
All right, commissioners, any questions for Jill or Chief Charles or Michael from the consultant agency? Go ahead, Commissioner. Okay, Commissioner Shattuck McNally.
Thank you, Commissioner Cafalas, appreciate that. So I think I heard what you said. You said, who is similar fees? Loveland Fire Rescue Authority, their fees are similar, or they're doing a current study? Because I do think they're using the same consultant, to my understanding.
They are, yes. Loveland Fire and Windsor Fire are doing studies right now. Frederick Firestone is the one that I was able to reach out to who had completed one already.
And those were similar?
Those were similar and had a similar kind of tiered structure also.
And maybe, I know who wants to answer this, and if I might, Madam Chair, another question, between the consultant or the fire chief. With the expansion of the fees to meet the needs of your community, what kind of metrics do you use? Is this just to meet the needs for the impact fees to help with funding the department? Or will they be looking at things like reducing response times? Or do you look at that, especially when you're growing so much? I kind of live out that way, and I know sometimes the growth is expanding and getting out to some of the unincorporated areas. I'm just curious about all of that.
Sure, I'd be more than happy to answer that. Chief Wilson mentioned that we acquired property at the intersection of Berthoud Parkway and the 287 bypass. The 1.72 acres was actually donated to us. We did close on the property. We do have a $500,000 to $800,000 commitment on infrastructure. But that site was identified through a study that was done within the standards of the Insurance Services Office to specifically reduce response times to that area for both fire and medical. So we have the land now. Of course, we don't have the funding at this point in time. Impact fees obviously would be, because of the growth up in that area, will assist us in building that. We've talked with Thompson Valley EMS to share that facility. So they're the health services district. They would have an ambulance in part of that station, and we would have our fire apparatus there. So the impact fees, we've also, we're looking at, it takes us almost 2 years to get funding on a residential property. And as Michael mentioned, 85% of our growth is residential, and that doesn't pay our way. Unfortunately, the town is only seeing about 15% increase, and those are actually have been very, very small square footage. For example, Taco Bell, McDonald's, that type of. So we deal on the capital side, we have a need there. Also with the reduction in the residential assessment rate, and it goes to the operating side, we saw a $510,000 decrease in revenues between 84 and 85. So working with less money today than we were a year ago. So we are planning for the future. We've talked with the town of Berthoud about a site at I-25 and Highway 56. Also talked with Ursa Major in the earlier stages. But also we've talked, we do have actually a ground that's set aside for us on a long-term, very, 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 I don't have the financial number in front of me, but for Ursa Major, which is off of County Road 7, has given us an opportunity to, in the future, put a station there if we need to. So we are looking at the future. Unfortunately, with the cost of inflation and the cost of doing business today, a fire truck increases 15% a year. Right now, for us to buy a fire engine, they're 2 years out, and a ladder truck is 4 years out. So we are working on we have had a capital replacement plan. It's basically a spreadsheet identifying age of apparatus, when those apparatus need to be, replaced. But we have our ladder truck right now is 24 years old. So we're using everything to the best of our ability. We just have not seen that commercial growth that actually gives us the meat that we could apply towards our capital.
Thank you, Chief, for answering that question, and you answered my other question about, you talked about the decrease, and I was wondering about if it was the changes in the property tax assessment. I agree with you. Development does not pay its way because of the needs and I kind of think that's what you said. It just, it doesn't keep up. And so I definitely understand the needs for the capital improvements in the future, because your community is really growing fast. My mom was born and raised there for the first years of her life, and it doesn't look the same at all. And I'm curious, this will also help you stay competitive for retaining your workforce and increasing your workforce and providing them with all those safety measures. I'm sure that's all part of this too.
Yes.
Great. Well, I appreciate you being here and helping help us understand some of this information. I really appreciate all of you and your time today. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Cafalas.
Yeah, I keep.
So I have a couple of questions and observations. First of all, thank you very much for your presentation and giving us a better understanding of the Nexus study. Two of my questions are directed to the Berthoud Fire Station folks, Fire Department folks, and then I have a couple of questions for staff. The first one is, how did you engage the building community in terms of these proposed impact fees? The builders who ultimately will be paying these fees to build their homes based on square footage. What was that process like?
We conducted the study, and then we did send a letter out to all the building departments, and also a letter that could be sent or provided to the different contractors or developers that came into the building departments.
Did you get any feedback from?
Our comment period is still open for another month, but we have not received any feedback as of yet.
Okay. That answers my first question. Thank you. My next question would be, and it's tied into a comment, and that is, can you remind us again the math and the logic behind up to a 1,200 square foot house having the proposed increase compared to I don't know what the biggest square footage house, but that was much more significant. What is the logic of that structure based on square footage? I know it's in the Nexus study, but I'm afraid that wasn't one of the things I reread over the weekend.
What I can tell you is that from an operational perspective, a 1,200 square foot house, whether it be a structure fire or interior gas leak, it requires additional services. Now, we have an agreement with neighboring agencies, Loveland Fire, Johnstown, and Longmont, but the amount of resources it would take, when we're getting into, and I'll just share this with an example, let's say a 3-story apartment complex, we're going to reach a point where we'll have to replace it. Our ladder truck is only a 75-foot, what they call quint. So for a 3-story apartment building, we need to buy a 110-foot. So as those larger buildings come in, and actually the Insurance Services Office are looking at not only the apartment complexes for ladder operation, but they're also looking at a 2-story structure, a 5,000 or 6,000 structure with a walkout basement. They consider that a 3-story structure. So more resources, more commitment, greater commitment.
The bigger the structure, the more resources, the bigger the commitment. Is that the takeaway?
Yes, basically.
Basically. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll be quick. To my esteemed colleagues here, to our county building official, the reference in the comparison to the Poudre Fire Authority impact study, the fees that were in there, didn't they do a recent update regarding their impact fee study?
It's relatively updated. I don't remember exactly when it was, but previously maybe the last 2 years, they had a single fee for single-family homes, and they went to the same kind of a tiered study on the same theory that the bigger the home, the more the bigger the fire is going to be. If there is a fire, it takes more resources. So they also have tiered. They're not exactly the same tiers, of course, and the fees for those tiers are different.
Okay. Then my last question, thank you, and that is, maybe this is a Leslie question. Remind us again what our role is in all of this, the commissioners, and what our options are?
I'll defer to Eric on that one, actually.
Oh, okay, gosh, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
It's a little complex because we have an existing intergovernmental agreement, IGA, with Berthoud Fire.
That's right.
But that intergovernmental agreement was based on the old state law, and they've changed the state law in terms of the whole basis for charging impact fees. And so they've also proposed to update to their IGA, but I've deferred that to the county attorney's office to negotiate on behalf of you, however you guys want to do that. So, but under the existing IGA, which is what we're working on, when they have a new nexus study with new fees, you have the authority to either approve the implementation of those fees, because we are collecting them and then transmitting those fees to Berthoud Fire, or you can have them in for discussion, or if you objected to those fees, you don't have to approve updating the fee schedule, but then that would probably lead to renegotiation or termination of the IGA. Because the presumption is that under the IGA, they study their costs, they tell you these are the fees we need, and you would say, okay, that's reasonable. So that's in a
helpful.
nutshell.
And so approving the proposed fees would still necessitate updating the IGA, because the current IGA was done prior to the new statutory change?
That might be a frank question, but under the new statutory change, fire districts can collect their own impact fees, but I think most of them would rather it get collected at the building permit stage, because that's a built-in process. It's a lot easier than having people go down to the fire department and pay a separate fee. So I'm not exactly sure whether you need to negotiate a new IGA, or we could simply, under the old one, approve the new fees, or because we have IGAs with other fire districts that we have not updated since the state law changed, and we're still collecting impact fees for those districts.
Thanks, Eric. That's helpful. Mr. County Attorney, hello.
It would be easy to update the IGA. The decision is really whether you want to approve this impact fee and if you want to collect it. You could refuse to collect it for them, or you could collect it for them. We can update the IGA. We've done it with, I think, Loveland. We just did an updated one that cites the new statute, so that wouldn't be very hard.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I think so.
I have a couple questions. Have you, so one of the questions that was up there was about residential sprinklers. Do you feel like that could, if you implemented that, or if some communities implemented that in your district, that would, I mean, would that save resources for you? I mean, would you be able to, I'm just wondering sort of the balance between residential sprinklers and increasing fees, like, could that maybe, change the amount you were charging on, I mean, then of course people would have the cost of putting in sprinklers, but, right, I mean, did you weigh that at all? when you looked at
The philosophy that the fire district has had for a number of years is that unless the property itself, the use of the property requires by code a residential sprinkler, we do not require them. With the exception of those in a rural area, whether it be Weld or Larimer or Boulder County, where there is limited or no available water for firefighting or difficult access getting into the property itself. So I would say that we have not taken into consideration reducing an impact fee based on a residential sprinkler. What we have found, even in rural subdivisions where we recommend that they, because of travel time from our station to the residents, recommend a residential, we get a tremendous amount of pushback because people, one, don't understand them, they don't want them, they'd rather, I've had more than one individual tell me, I'd rather put my sprinkler system in my yard. And so we have not taken consideration on this impact fee study to reduce on behalf of sprinkler systems.
Yeah, I was just curious, and that would have to be adopted in a jurisdiction level, like that's not, I mean, you make the recommendation if you would want that to happen, but ultimately, like, we'd have to adopt that as a county, and Bertha would have to adopt that as well with part of the building codes, is that right?
It's in the International Residential Code and has been for several cycles now, requiring sprinklers for single-family homes. And this commission and prior commissions have wanted us to amend that out and not require it in general in single-family homes. Right now, we require it in duplexes and new short-term rentals. But the board has approved requiring single-family home sprinklers in a couple of fire districts, being Lyons and Estes Park, because they wanted it in their codes, and their feeling was they have so much extremely rural area, bad roads, no water, access is difficult. By the time they get there, it's too late. So they wanted a sprinkler. But just to remind the board, in the residential code, sprinklers are not intended to put the fire out. They're just intended to slow the fire down and give the family or the occupants time to get out. Yeah. And I've heard many fire departments say, if we get to the house and it's on fire and the family's standing outside, then we've won, basically. That's all it's trying to do. So, but it won't put the fire out or potentially keep it from spreading. But that would be up to this board if we wanted to require sprinklers in all single-family homes.
Thank you for explaining that. And then, so, I think that the costs are the costs, I do understand that. It's not like you're inflating the costs. Do you think it's, I mean, and I'm assuming that it's probably fairly expensive to hire a consultant to do this, and you have to hire a consultant every time you do this, so it probably doesn't necessarily make sense to do this more than every 5 years, is that right? Or?
I would agree with that, yes.
Okay.
I mean, there are other standards that we have to meet, which actually do require the assistance. For example, a wildfire protection plan. We don't have the staff to be able to do that. So that's an out-of-pocket expense, but again, it gives us an insight into what we're dealing with from a risk assessment. But the same thing also holds true for our impact fee study. It gives us a good idea of what we need and where we need to go with our capital.
Does it make sense, and are you allowed to, under statute, to be able to tie it to inflation at all? So that you can maybe not have big leaps every 5 years?
Yes, good question, Commissioner, and the districts can, and that's often one of our recommendations, is that they use either an engineering inflation index or construction inflation index to annually update the fees in between those 5-year periods where they're conducting a new study for precisely that reason. I would say it's not the habit of many districts to do so, and so you end up getting sort of these big leaps in between the study updates, but our recommendation is always that you make those small adjustments for inflation on an annual basis, yes.
Yeah, have you all thought of that? I mean, I don't know. Sometimes those little jumps are easier for people to handle than the big, the bigger jump every 5
That's
years.
something we would take in consideration for this study, yes.
I know that we have some of our fees that are tied to, you mentioned two inflationary indexes, I think, construction or, and engineering, yeah, and so, yeah, I mean, I think it's just something to consider. I mean, we just saw big numbers, and I think and it's not, and we see big numbers like that all the time, knowing with some of the increases. And yeah, I mean, what does a fire truck cost? I mean, over $1 million at this point, a ladder truck probably more. And so, the costs are the costs, and we definitely want development to pay its way for sure. And a reminder to folks that these are on new homes and new commercial buildings, so this is not on existing. Well, yeah.
If I could
I'm
just
sorry.
jump in on that,
Go ahead.
we do adjust the fees on an inflation basis. I think that's in all the IGAs we have. Most of the fire districts, we're just using the regional cost of living index, which is the same thing we use to annually adjust planning and building fees. With Loveland, they're using, I think, the engineering news analysis, which is maybe more precise in terms of what the cost would be. But the problem is, so for instance, last year inflation was 2.7% or whatever it was. It might be those small increases. Then every 5 years you do an Nexus study, and the increase is like 100% or some large amount. So those small increases will help, but they won't keep up.
Just something like construction and engineering more reflect the market, because I'm thinking about like some of the, where we've seen like costs in road and bridge and stuff, where those costs are going up way faster than, the CPI or, sort of consumer inflation kind of. Are they more reflective of some of those costs?
So it's difficult to get an index that sort of encapsulates all of the costs that a district faces. I mean, a construction index generally is going to be a lot of material expenses, but it may not include a lot of the professional and design services that are required for construction. Similar to what the chief said, I'm not familiar with any inflation indexes that look at the cost of a fire engine. And so there's certain specialty equipment that they need where there's just no other way to account for the inflation other than to see what did it cost last time we did the study and what does it cost today. And that's generally where you get those big sort of leaps in between the updates.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what Eric said, that doesn't always capture, the increases, but it helps, I think, maybe to tie it to some kind of inflationary index so that you're, raising. So I guess you don't have to have those big, increases every 5 years. So I guess I would encourage kind of thinking about that and looking at that.
One of the things that the 15% increase on an average annual basis on apparatus is pretty consistent across the board with different manufacturers. We're facing right now a replacement of our 800 megahertz mobile and portable radios. And of course, there's only one or two vendors out there that are used. One is Motorola. And so they're telling us now, if we get a new radio today, we'll be replacing it again in 7 years because the technology is changing so fast that they won't support the radios that we're buying today in 7 years. So some of that is very difficult to estimate as far as what that inflation is on some of those items.
Yeah, I don't think you can actually make it, kind of get it perfect, but if you increase it at least a little bit every year, you can maybe recapture some of those costs as they're happening and then maybe not have that huge increase. So I guess I just, I would encourage that. I mean, I don't have a problem with, what you're proposing here. For me, I think that the costs are what they are, and so it's not like you're trying to make money, you're just trying to keep people safe. And so I would be comfortable writing, whether it's an amendment to the IGA to include that. But I think we should collect the fees. Honestly, I think it's better for our residents if we do collect the fees on your behalf, because we don't want to be like, oh, well, with Berthoud, Fire District, you have to collect from, you have to remit those payments to you guys, and that becomes that confuses a process that we're trying to simplify and make easier for folks. So I don't know if the commissioners want to share anything else, but, okay.
I don't want to repeat too much of what Commissioner Stevens had to say, but I think it is noted that the change in state statute also has something to do with this and these changes. But I said it before, growth doesn't pay its way, but the need for, services has increased exponentially for the last few years. And with the growth that we see and trying to make sure response times are appropriate, and I know you all want to get there as fast as you can, and also looking at the changing conditions and the risks that we're at. I think it's at risk for Larimer County is 94% higher than anywhere else in the country for wildfire and risks for fires. It's a risk that that to me kind of keeps me up at night sometimes. And so giving our partners, our fire departments, the tools they need to meet that and to keep them safe and also help them, support them as they are trying to serve the communities that we all serve together is really important. Unfortunately, costs are driving up housing, and we all know everyone's feeling it, but everyone's budgets still have to be met for you to provide those services. So thank you for coming today to explain about this in your process and your mindset, and thank you to staff for helping us navigate this. It sounds like this process going forward would be fairly straightforward to adopt this, so and amend the IGA. So I just wanted to say it's uncomfortable to see that big of an increase, but it makes sense, and I understand why you did it. So I thank you, and I appreciate it, and I support that those costs. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Commissioner Cavallis.
So I too can, based on our further conversation, I can support moving in the direction of approving the proposed fee structure. I would like to reinforce, emphasize, whatever you all can do to incentivize smaller square footage homes. And I'm grateful, Jill, that you're going to have the conversation with your board regarding any types of waivers or whatever might make sense for incentivizing affordable housing, smaller square footage. The comments were made about the residential fire sprinklers and all that, or commercial, and also in the WUI, of course, we have how do we incentivize folks to do defensive space or home ignition zones, those kinds of things. But I would, and also I think to the point of my colleagues, encourage you to have that additional conversation with your board about the, maybe there's a way to build in an inflationary increase so it's not, so there's not so much sticker shock every 5 years or so. Those are my thoughts, but thank you.
No, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for coming out today. We really appreciate you coming back and answering some of our questions, and we wish you all the best.
Yeah, well, thank you for the opportunity. You have a good afternoon.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll move on to the Community Development Director update.
All right, good afternoon, Commissioners. Rebecca Everett, Community Development Director. And for my update today, I have a couple quick things and then wanted to reiterate something that was sent in email as well. So first, you have a work session this week, a joint work session with the Planning Commission. The only topic on the agenda for that work session is the Larimer on the Move plan, which I know you have seen presentations for. Planning Commission hasn't had as many updates as you all have on that, but it will be a good time to discuss the details of that plan with the Planning Commission, particularly before it goes to the Planning Commission for adoption shortly thereafter. Any questions about the work session? I know Commissioner Stevens will be absent. Okay. We also, on Thursday of this week, Eric just stepped out, but we will be having the in-person interviews on Thursday with our candidates for the county building official position, that the person who will succeed Eric after he retires later this year. So we have a full day of activities planned. We have 4 finalists that we are interviewing, and we hope to have a top candidate emerge from those interviews and hope to be able to announce a new building official soon. The goal is to have that person overlap with Eric for some period of time for onboarding and cross-training and helping to transition the team because he has been such a stable leader in that group for so many years. Finally, I wanted to mention 2 rulemakings related to oil and gas that the county intends to participate in. And I know you all received this information over email. I wanted to make sure we shared it publicly as well. So there are 2 new rulemakings happening at the state level. The first is with the Energy and Carbon Management Commission. The second is with the Public Utilities Commission. The rulemaking that the ECMC is pursuing, they're calling statutory alignment, and it's really implementation of new rules that have been adopted in statute that govern the Energy and Carbon Management Commission. Those requirements relate to worker certification, adopting the use of the EnviroScreen tool when siting or reviewing permits for new oil and gas facilities, and improving the enforcement policies. We know that this is a rulemaking that industry is participating, oil and gas industry is participating heavily in, and we want to make sure that Larimer County as a local government has a voice in that process as well to ensure that our residents and our community is well protected. The other rulemaking through the Public Utilities Commission relates to advanced leak detection and repair on gas pipelines and setting the stage for easier adoption of those technologies that allow oil and gas industry to conduct their own pipeline inspections in a more affordable way with less cost burden to the state, who currently does that using inspectors. So it's should be a benefit both to industry to identify those leaks as soon as they're happening, and to those who may be impacted or the land that may be impacted by any kind of leaks from pipelines. So the county intends to file as an interested party in both of these rulemakings, so that we will have party status and the ability to provide comments via either staff or our legal counsel, Matt Sura, throughout those processes.
That sounds great. Any questions about that? Go ahead, Commissioner.
First, I just want to thank you and Matt Sura and the team for continuing to keep us as an interested party status and keeping us at the table. We weren't always at the table, and I know it's a big shift. I know it takes a lot of staff time and focus and a busy time already, but I think it's really important, and it shows our commitment to a lot of things. And I think we're also learning and gaining some, I don't want to say reputation, but some status and some partnerships there that I think are helping us overall. So I just first want to thank you both and the team for sticking with it and staying at that table, because it has been kind of dynamic process in the last few years and it's changing. But I'm really proud of the work that you're all doing and that we're all doing together. It's just it's important work. And I'm just wondering, as you're looking at, so that's where my question's going, knowing your work plan and some of the things that are, I wish I had magic wand because there's so much I know you all want to do and we want to do. Is all these new rulemakings and things, I know Matt Sora is covering some of that, but is that how is that impacting your capacity in your work plan? That's what I'm getting to.
Yes, yeah, thank you for that question. I will say our partnership with Matt Sura as a external legal counsel has been incredibly invaluable. He can one, identify issues and respond to them quickly. He really extends our reach and is able to proactively identify issues in a way that staff would not have the time to be able to do. And he can serve as our representative in these rulemakings. So as a result, there is a lot less burden on staff. Depending on the topic, we will have either community development staff, Matt Lafferty, our local government designee, or Leah Schneider, and health participate as subject matter experts. And sometimes, at Matt Sura's advice, we will have staff testify if that we think that will be received better, or there may be some technical expertise that our staff has that's really important. But I would say it's generally a minimal level of effort that's needed from our staff, or when there is more effort needed, it's in a pretty short time frame. So it's been a really effective use of those consultant dollars to leverage Matt Sura, who is also working with other local governments in the region, and we're able to sometimes combine efforts or share the cost with others on some of this engagement advocacy work.
Great. I appreciate your answer, and thank you again, both of you, and Matt Sura and Matt Lafferty and everyone. Tremendous work. So I just wanted to thank you for that. Thanks.
Commissioner Cavallis, any questions or comments? Nope. Okay. Thank you.
I just have 3 quick items, and I will be quick because I know we're at time. One is you have a hearing this evening for 3 subdivisions that had finished their petition signature effort for PIDs and are looking to be put on the ballot potentially. I talked to Katie Bilby very briefly, and she's not expecting anything too out of the ordinary for those. There might be a few questions that stray beyond the purpose of the hearing, and if that happens, then Frank and she can help kind of steer back toward the purpose. But it sounds like they should be fairly routine in all. Secondly, the transportation poll that we discussed last week will start tomorrow. So if you get any questions about it, that should be out on the street for 10 days to 2 weeks or so before we can come back and share the results with you. So we're excited that that's beginning. I do have some more cards and information if you need those for any of your community conversations or anything as we kind of wind down in that phase of our effort. And then lastly, we are submitting our water master plan that you all approved and completed in December for recognition for a Growing Water Smart award. And so I would like to ask if it'd be possible to have you all sign a letter to submit it. We have some other partners who are signing that. This is really in part for recognition because I think of the great work that was done with our partners on it, but also so that we can kind of improve our position to continue the implementation work that we've been doing and seek further grants and whatnot. We actually just submitted another grant application about a week ago to do a groundwater study, and thanks to our planning staff who supported that and worked with our consultant who's doing the grant submissions. So we'll hope that we get good news on that in the next few months, but that was one of the implementation steps for the water plan that we had discussed. And then we're also continuing on a fall event that we'll come back to you when we have more details to talk about that. So there's a few things that are in the works, and we'd like to keep the momentum going around that. So if it would be all right, I will share that letter with you, and since we're at time, that may be something that we'll do outside of this, and I'll seek some signatures. And that's it from me. Thank you.
Yeah, that sounds great. I imagine that we're all happy to sign that. Mm-hmm. One of the questions I had about this evening was in the packet, I felt like in the past maybe I missed it, but I read through the packet. There is no indication around how many people signed the petition or who signed the petition. Is that something that comes to us at the time of the meeting, or?
Let me check with Katie on that, and I will make sure she has an answer, or I can share an answer a little bit later this afternoon. But yes, I would expect she would have the information at the hearing, if not before.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Anything else before we go? All right. Well then, at 2:34, we're adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.